Good afternoon, everyone. This is a continuation of production. In this lecture, we are going to actually see how production is carried out in SAP. And as you all may have realized that production requires first forecasting or planning for how much we are going to produce, and that's a module that is in SAP that's called Sales and Operational Planning. That SOP stands for Sales and Operational Planning, and it allows you to forecast and plan for sales and production, because production will have to be based on your forecasting or your guess for how much you are going to sell. You don't want, of course, to overproduce, because you'll end up with extra stock, and you don't want to underproduce because you will have missed opportunities. So you want to forecast how much to produce based on historical data, based on your own forecasting. There are lots of forecasting tools that take into consideration current situation of the market and things like that. And so you have estimated future data, you have historical data, and you also have existing, what's currently being demanded, and so on. So based on the planning, you get a target for production, and of course, like that fits your target for sales. So as you can see from the graph, uh, the orange graph or line graph is for inventory, and as you increase your sales, and whereas your production is kind of stable, then you will eat up that inventory, or you will tend to decrease inventory. The more we sell, the more we deplete inventory. So we look at that graph, and that might be historical data. You're looking at last year, January through December, and it's very important that you look at historical data as well as the current existing data. What are we seeing so far in terms of how much the demand is, and shall we adjust production in order again to decrease inventory or not? So remember, sales and operational planning is a tool for forecasting and planning your sales production targets. You have certain sales target because you want to be profitable, and as based on your sales forecast, you have a production target. As you can see, planning occurs at the top organizational level, and that's at the executive level. At that level, we are doing forecasting for the future. Again, forecasting, if you have taken statistics, is really based a lot on historical data, but it also takes into consideration what's occurring currently in the market. Based on your forecasting, you come up again with certain targets for your sales and your operations. Now, it's very interesting that you see like two inputs going into forecasting. We have SIS and we have COPA. Anyone has any idea what these are? SIS stands for Sales Information System, and even though we haven't yet covered business intelligence, but you will see that it does a lot of aggregation. So it aggregates your sales data in order to give you insights about what happened in the past. You can see that you can what we say roll up means aggregate or abstract, and you can also drill down and find more details. But basically, the tool allow you to summarize information that you have collected from the sales and distribution module. The COPA, on the other hand, stands for controlling and profitability analysis. So you want to look and see if the products that you are selling and if the particular location, the market segments that you are in, the customers that you are currently serving, are actually helping you achieve your profitability targets. So it's not just enough to look at sales. We also want to make sure that the actual products that you are selling are also profitable. So that's why we need the two input going into forecasting. What am I actually selling, and is it really profitable for me or not? Based on that two pieces of information, you are able to look at the past and forecast what will be the demand for the future. And based on that, you are going to come up with sales and production targets. You are going to determine, this is what I'm going to sell for these particular products in these particular markets, and I will target these customers. So that's the sales and operation planning. These are like happening at the strategic level, at the upper management level. So the chief or operation officer would be someone that is involved, the chief executive officer, and so on. Now at the middle management, now we have demand management. And demand management is trying to determine how much price cuts should you give, how much promotion should you offer. And remember, information from the sales and operation planning is feeding into that, because it's telling it how will the consumer react to a price cut, or how will they react to promotions. So given historical data, you're trying to plan how much should you give in terms of price cut, when should you offer them, because these are like times when the customer is very receptive to them, and so on. So that's happening at the middle level management. Now we are ready to actually start the production. So we have the master production schedule, and in there we are actually determining how much to produce of each product at each point in time. You don't want, of course, to have bottlenecks. You don't want to be out of stock. So you want to maintain a safety stock at all times. So based on what we have done at the upper level in terms of forecasting, setting up the sales goal, the production goal, determining when to offer like price cuts or motivations and promotion to the customer. Based on all of that, we will come with the master production schedule, and this is a schedule for how much to produce of each product at each point in time. So if we give the master production schedule as an input, the forecast demand, we get as an output the production plan, an actual plan for production. If we also give them the sales demand, and as a result, we get as an output the resource requirements. What kind of raw materials, what are the semi-finished goods or trading goods will we need in order to meet, again, our sales target and our production target. If we give them the current inventory level, then the output would be available stock projection. What will be our projection for what will be in stock at each period in time. The material requirement planning is concerned or making sure that the material you need for production to satisfy internal orders or sales and distribution are available. So you want to make sure all the raw material or all of the items that are listed on my bill of material will be available when I need them to start the production, in order to meet my delivery date for sales and distribution, or dates for internal orders, because you will see that sometimes products are produced to satisfy internal demand within the organization. So you want to make sure you understand the difference between the master production schedule and the material requirement planning. The master production schedule is really concerned with determining how much to produce of high valued products. These are like the end products, your finished products that you are going to sell. Material requirement planning, on the other hand, is a multi-level planning looking at the material, the semi-finished goods, and the raw material that you need in order to meet the target for your production. So one is a single level planning, and that's the master production schedule, concerned only about like determining when to produce the high valued products. These are like your finished products. Material requirement planning, on the other hand, is concerned with making sure or guaranteeing that the material you need to satisfy production for internal orders or for sales and distribution are available. Once I have that, then I'm ready to start manufacturing. Either the material already exists and I can start the manufacturing execution, and once I'm done, then I have my products for the order. Or if they are not available, if the material is not available, then I need to buy and start the procurement process, which we have already talked about in purchasing. As you can see, there are different players that are involved in the different stages of production planning and execution. At the top level, because we're dealing with forecasting, we are dealing with historical data and trying to determine what should be our sales target and what would be our production target. And the fact that we are taking information, historical information from the sales information system and from the controlling and profitability analysis. All of this is done at the very top of the organization. So you have the CEO, the COO, the Chief Operation Officer, Chief Information Officer, simply because you need a lot of information from the IT, from the system itself, the CFO, the controller, marketing director. They all play one role or the other in the forecasting and determining your sales target. At the detailed planning level, you have the line managers, production, scheduler, the material resource planning controller, capacity planners. And again, you are dealing now with when should I produce. I already got my targets from upper level. Now I want to determine when to produce products so I satisfy the requirements that I have either for internal orders or for customer order or like sales orders. At the execution level now, these are the people who actually carry out execution or carry out production. That's when you have the line workers, the shop floor supervisors, and so on. Okay, so what exactly is forecasting? Forecasting really is at the heart of production planning, because there is no way that you can instantaneously respond to a demand, market demand. You have to have some forecast about what the demand will be and to actually start production and then readjust based on the actual records or the actual numbers that you will see. So it is really the foundation of sales and operation planning. You'll never be correct. I mean, either you are overstock or understock, because it's very hard to have an accurate forecast of how much the demand will be. There are some companies who have really built a lot of experience in forecasting. I think if you read the note on underneath the slide, it tells you that Cisco is one of these companies that have very accurate forecasts. And that's because their products are really, it's easy for you to forecast these kind of products like used for networking and so on. But when we come to products that involve customer taste, like fashion, it might be very hard. It's also easier to do forecasts for a group of products than to do forecasts for a single product. Single product, you are more prone to do errors. So forecasts are important. You have like to forecast how much will be the demand because you cannot react instantaneously to market conditions. But later on, as you collect information about actual demand and see the variance between the actual and the plan, you can readjust in the later or second quarter and so on. Analyzing the actual demand values, you see that you have different forecasting model. Either you have, and I'll start with the very last actually because this is the easiest, that's the constant model. And in the constant model, you see very little variation from the mean, from the average. So that would be a constant forecasting model. Now, the trend model, you see again the value. There is very little variation from the mean. They occasionally go up or go down, fall or rise over a long period of time, but there is occasional variation from the mean. On the other hand, the seasonal, you have these peaks. You have a peak or a low value, and they differ significantly from the mean. The mean is stable, but you have these with the seasonal. You have a peak or a low value that is different from the mean. With the seasonal trend, you have continual increase or decrease in the mean value itself. So the mean value is increasing or decreasing. So now you can set SAP to either automatically choose a model, a forecasting model, or for you to do it manually. If you want the automatic, then you have to give into the system what is for the constant model, for example, what is the basic value. For the trend model, you need to give it the basic value and the trend value. For the seasonal model, you need to give it the basic value, and we said we have these seasonal indices, the upper value or the peak and the lower value, and so on. So you have to give in some information for it to automatically run the forecasting for you. So in the demand management, you're trying to determine how much to produce and when to deliver specific products. For you to be able to do that, you have to look, as we said, at the forecast. You have to look at the current demand that you are seeing from the customer when you are going like to provide price reduction based on customer behavior in the past. The output from that will be both a master production schedule and a material requirement planning. So either I have what we said, the single level planning, where I know how much I want to produce, and based on that, I will also determine what I need like to purchase or what kind of raw material I need in order to fulfill these targets. So the master production schedule is just like for, as we said, high valued products, that's the finished products. The material requirement planning is a multi-level planning where you are looking at the bill of material and determining how much you will need from each of the items listed in there based on the target, the production target that you have. As we said, like planning is very important for you to determine how much to produce of a product. You cannot wait until customer orders or the orders come for you to start the production. That will be very late for the customer, especially for products that the customer is not willing to wait for it, or like low priced products. So planning is important for you to determine how much to produce and when you are going to deliver. There are several types of planning strategies within SAP, like the make to stock, make to order, configurable items, and assembly orders. You would use the make to stock if you want, if you are going to produce products independent of the customer demand, independent of the customer orders. So you do not wait for you to produce. You forecast, as we said, demand, and then you produce the goods, and there is an anticipation that you will have to stock the goods for some period of time. So of course, in the make to stock, you have some storage, some storage cost in there. There is a storage charges. You want, of course, to minimize that cost, and you want to be as accurate as possible in terms of your forecasting. But there will always be that storage cost because you want to fulfill the customer orders immediately. You will always see the make to stock is with products that are not very expensive, because companies will not invest that heavily in products that are expensive without an order. So the make to order will be the strategy that they will use in cases where the product is very expensive. So for example, when we are talking about production of an airplane, there is no way that the manufacturer will produce that unless they actually get an order. So it is the order, the sales order, that start the manufacturing process, simply because it is very high priced product and they would not be able to stock it. The configurable items or configurable products here, and they talk about mass customization. If you look at Dell, that's a very perfect example. You have these laptops that are configurable, so the customer, there is a high degree of variation. The customer can choose how much RAM they want, whether they want like a particular video card, and so on. So there is a lot of choices that the customer can make, and as a result, the final product, there is variation among the final product. So the parts are make to stock, but the final product is a make to order. They do not assemble the laptop until the customer actually put in like the order itself. Related to the configurable product are the assembly orders, and here the product is made of several items, so there has to be a bill of material, and as soon as we receive the sales order, then it creates either a production order or a planned order to assemble components together. So you will have a routing that you will follow that tells you step by step how to assemble the components together in order to produce the final product for the customer. The master production scheduling, as we said, is concerned about planning for the high valued materials. These are like the finished products. So you're not concerned at this level with planning for the components. You're only concerned with material that will influence profit, that are critical, that use critical resources. And if you come to think of it, these will be your finished products. So it's not the nuts and bolts that you are focused on in the master production scheduling, but rather the bicycles, the finished bicycles, the deluxe, and so on, because these products have direct impact on your profit, and they use, of course, critical resources. This is very different from the raw materials. So you do the raw material in the material requirement planning, but the master production scheduling, this is just planning or determining how much to produce of the finished goods itself. So at this point, you are looking at the highest level of bill of material. The second level after the master requirement, the master production schedule is the material requirement planning. And in there, you're looking at all levels of the bill of material because you're trying to determine how much do I need of the components and the items in order to generate the final product. So you have to look at all items at all levels of the bill of material. We said that the bill of material may have multiple levels. And as you go lower, then you get a very detailed view of the items that you get. Sometimes the items are semi-finished goods, they are assembled. And we talked about the wheel and the frame and so on. So the output of the material requirement planning will be a production. Of course, there is a production plan, but also there might be a purchasing plan if you do not have all of the items needed in stock. You will have to go to the supplier now and send like a purchase order for you to get these raw materials. So I have to, of course, for me to determine how much I will purchase and when I can start production, I need to look at my inventory. I need to look at all of the material that is needed at the lowest level of the bill of material, and then generate the purchase order. And based on when they can deliver, the suppliers, I will have my production order. So inventory really is divided into two types: independent demand and dependent demand. Independent demand is the final product. So if we are talking about a bicycle, a pizza, a computer, these are independent demand. The dependent demand, on the other hand, is the demand for component parts or sub-assemblies. So it's really dependent on the demand for the final product. So I will not order raw material for a computer or parts of the computer if I do not have an order for the computer itself. So independent demand, as we said, is finished goods. Dependent demand is component parts. Now the relation, if I ask you what kind of document capture the relationship between these two types of inventory, what will you say? And I need you to think a bit, and it's again a document that's created in production. The answer would be the bill of material, because the bill of material lists at the very top the independent demand or the final product, and then underneath this we have a list of items of all the dependent demand or the components. Of course, we have multiple levels of the bill of material, so I may have at the low level all of the items, but then at a higher level I may have sub-assemblies and so on. So we said that the material requirement planning is a multi-level planning. You are looking at all of the material you will need in order to generate the final product as determined by your master production schedule and the demand program. For you to do that, for you to determine what do I need, you need to take 5 logical steps. The first one is a net requirements calculation. How much will I need in order to, again, generate the final production, the master production schedule? Now, how much will I need depend on how much do I have in stock, how much is going to be released from production, and that would be your allocatable inventory, and you subtract from it the total requirements, and that would be your net requirements. So let's take a look again. Your net requirement calculation is looking at how much do I currently have in inventory plus how much will be released from production. The two together is your allocatable inventory. Now I need to look at my total requirements. If you subtract now the allocatable environment, the allocatable inventory from the total requirement, then whatever is left, then that will be your net requirement calculation. that will be what you still need to procure or to produce in order to have your or to meet your sales target or to meet your production target. The lot size calculation determine how much would be produced, and sometimes it is you will see on the next slide that there are like different ways in order to calculate the lot size. You can have like a fixed lot size, so there is a fixed quantity that you are producing every time, or it can be the exact quantity lot for lot, so whatever the requirements that you have specified in the previous step is, then that's what you are going to produce. But other times you see that you can combine several like requirements together, so you have a period lot sizing. So in that case you are combining like days or weeks, so every 3 days or every 1 week you run the production for that requirement. So it really depends on the type of lot size calculation. Once we know the lot size, then the next step would be to determine how you are going to procure. Are you procuring in-house or external? Usually, if it is a semi-finished good or like a raw material, then you are procuring externally. Whereas if it is a finished good, then you are procuring internally. The next will be the scheduling, and that's determining or scheduling the different capacity that you need in order to produce. It might be labor, it might be a machine time, and so on. And then the last step is the BOM explosion, is trying to look at the lowest level of the BOM and determining all of the material that you need. So as we said, the lot size calculation can be like fixed, or they call it here static, and that means there is a fixed value that you are going to produce. For periodic, you combine certain days or weeks together in order to, so multiple periods are combined together, and you look at the requirements of these different periods and you come up with a total, and that will be your net calculation. Or the optimum on the other side takes into consideration the cost of storage and would calculate what would be the best quantity to produce based on the cost, based on what is more economical for you. So you may be required to produce 100, but at the end you actually produce 500 because it's more economical for you to purchase things from at like a wholesale and so on. So it takes into consideration really the cost. As we said earlier, the procurement may be either external or internal, depending on the type of material. You would go with the external if you are buying raw material or you are buying trading goods that you do not produce yourself. Whereas the internal procurement will be things that you produce. So it could be the all of your finished products, in fact. Like, so in case of GBI, we have the bicycles. These are procured internally. So whenever you run out of bicycle, you will have a planned order, and according based on that planned order, you will have a production order. The production order will be only released when you know all of the raw materials are already in storage and are available, and then you have the process order of actually like finishing the whole production process. When we come to scheduling, we have to schedule production and also procurement, because some of the raw material or some of the components that you need for production may not be available. And as a result, you have to take into consideration how much time will it take for the supplier to deliver these raw material and components, and to have them. Once you have secured all of your raw material and components, you can start the actual production. And when we are doing production, there is like setup time for setting up the machines and preparing the work center. Actual processing time, that's the time for actually doing the manufacturing itself. And then there is inter-operation time. That's the time of moving material from one work center to another. There are like some work centers, as we said, that are just focused on assembly. There are others that are for packaging, and so on. So you will be moving from one work center to the other, and it will take time for you to transfer or to move material from one work center to the other. And finally, you have your finished product at the end. When you are planning for the material, you can either use the MRP or consumption-based planning. These are like the two types for that are within SAP. And the difference between them is that MRP, as we said, is a multi-level planning, but it is tied to the master production schedule, which means that these are the components that you will use in order to deliver finished products. As we have seen, it takes into consideration your sales and operation production plan, and it takes like historical data along with or like business intelligence data about your sales records, plus what the profitability analysis. So it takes these two into consideration. With regard to consumption-based planning, this is a little bit different in that you are like you have a reorder point, a safety stock, and as soon as you deplete all of your stock, then you reorder right away. So it is sometimes automatic. The forecast is only based on historical data. So as soon as you replenish your stock and you reach the reorder point, then you will go and order again. And the ordering is fixed. So it is a fixed lot size. So just now to recap, MRP, we said, is based on or takes as an input the information coming from your master production schedule. The master production schedule says these are the number of units that I need to produce for the finished products. I need now to also look at the bill of material and see all of the material that I need in order to produce the finished product. With consumption-based planning, you don't go through like looking at historical data as well as productivity analysis and do the forecast. With the consumption-based, you're only looking at historical data. What have I done in the past? And based on that, you calculate a reorder point. That's your safety stock. That's the point at which when your stock reaches that point, you have to reorder again. So you have to forecast based on historical. You have to determine the reorder point, and as soon as you deplete, you will have to replenish. So as you can see from the graph, I have a safety stock. At this point, when I reach the safety stock, I have to replenish again. As the reorder point is higher than the safety stock, and that's because it takes time to replenish. There is a lead time. You don't want to have like to go below the safety. There is no way that you can go below the safety stock. So your reorder point on that graph is higher because it takes time to replenish. Whether you are procuring or producing, it will take time. There is a lead time to avoid going below the safety stock, your reorder point will be a much higher. As you can see also, the lot size is really fixed. You have a fixed lot size. Every time you reach the reorder point, then you run production or you run procurement for that fixed lot size. And that's what we call consumption-based planning. The output of the MRP is a planned order. And this is a request for production to produce specific material, number of units of this material, and when it is needed. So as when we run the MRP, as a result, we would get the planned order. As we said, it is a request for production to produce specific number of the material or the materials that we need, how many we need, and when we need them. So it's very similar to a purchase requisition that we talked about in PO in purchasing. And in fact, the planned order is not a commitment. Someone has to act on that planned order and say, okay, I need to start production, so I have to convert it into a production order. Or it could be like a planned order for trading goods or for goods or for things that I don't produce. So I need like to purchase these. So I will create under procurement now purchase requisition. It all depends whether it is an in-house production or it is an external procurement. So the plan, and it could be both. It could involve both. That some of the things that you need for production you will have to procure before you can start production, and that's why you see that arrow going both ways between production and purchase requisition. So the planned order is not a commitment. It's similar to a purchase requisition, saying that this is a request for production. We need to produce these items in these quantities at that particular point in time. Someone has to act on the planned order and actually convert it into either just a production order or just a purchase requisition, or actually both. If I have everything in stock and I'm ready to do the production, it will just convert into a production order. If the material is procured externally, the material that I need is something that I do not produce, I'm just like selling, so in that case I will create only a purchase requisition and create the purchase order. Or it could be involving both, that I need to start production but I don't have all of the raw material and I need to buy and start the purchasing because I procure them externally from the organization. So this is just a summary of what we have just talked about. The planned order, as we said, is not a formal commitment. It is a request to start production or to start purchasing or to do both. If the material that is designated or identified in the planned order is produced internally, then I would have a production order, which is now a request to produce the specific product. And if it is procured externally, then I will have a purchase order. The purchase order may be there might be a purchase requisition required before the purchase order. Or it could be both, that you have, as we said, both the purchase order and the production order, because you need to produce, but you don't have all of the raw material that you need in order to produce them. So when you start the production and you look at the bill of material and you look at the availability, you find out that there are some material that you will need to reorder. So the production order will specify how much of the material we want to produce, what time, how much time it will take, what are the processes or the steps that we need, what raw materials do we need, and or human resources, and how much would be the cost for settlement. Remember, we said that the cost at a work center has to be associated or has to be attributed to a cost center. So whatever cost is incurred in the work center, it needs to be charged to a cost center. Here is a sample production order, and as you can see from the header, the order has a number like the purchase orders before and the sales order. You also see the plant that is assigned for the production order, the type of material, the person responsible for scheduling, and also you see the status of the order, and REL means it is released. There are other statuses for the order. You can have CRTD, which means it's just created, which means you created the order but you have not yet released it. It can be partially released. It can be released, as you can see in here on the head. You can also see that the production order can show the components needed to produce that quantity. It can also show the steps for you to, in order to produce, the steps needed in order to produce the order. These operations that you need in order to produce, that you need to follow in order to produce, you can also see the sequence, what needs to be performed first and what next. We also see capacity, how the work will be performed and is distributed or split among machines or people. Of course, like production of something like a bike will involve human resources, will involve certain machines and so on. And you need like to, as we said, you will have to move material from one work center to the other. So all that information can be found from the production order. The production order also has estimates of the cost for components, for material, for overhead, for people. So you can get just an estimate, but as you will see, while you're doing production, that estimate may be different from the actual cost. You may end up using more material because some material get destroyed or were damaged during the production process. You may take more time or less time. So the actual cost is accumulated in the work center. The production order will only have estimates of the cost. So at the end, when you complete the order, now we said that the cost is accumulated in the production order itself, and it has to be settled. It has to be charged to a specific cost centers and have to be identified by certain cost objects or cost items. Remember the primary cost element and the secondary cost element. So you have to, that's what we call settlement. At the end of the production order, the actual cost accumulated needs to be settled, which means it needs to be allocated to cost objects and to cost centers. So after the production order has been executed and the materials have been created, the material actually produced are recorded in the production order. So now the production order will have a confirmation. So the confirmation means that it has already it's already completed and the material has already been produced. So you have a lot of information that you can get from the production order. I told you like the production order can show the components, it can show the how, which is the sequence of operations or the set of operations that need to be executed and their sequence. Well, you would wonder, are we recopying that material? Didn't we actually define them in the bill of material and in the routing? Well, these documents are actually copied to the production order. We said that the production order has estimates of costs, but as you actually incur cost in the different work center, the actual cost is also saved on the production order and then will later have to be allocated to the different cost centers and cost objects. So you have a lot of material, either they are copied into the production order or are accumulated and then saved to the production order. So a lot of reference material tied to the production order. And actually, the production order is based on the planned order. They were actually copied to the planned order and then transferred to the production order. So the bill of material, the routing were on copied to the planned order, and then they are further copied to the production order. Once the planned order has been released, then we can do the schedule, and scheduling will calculate the amount of time you need for the various operations, the dates, the exact dates when the various operations are to be performed, and what capacities that you need. The capacity, as we said, can be human resources, can be machines, and so you need these resources at specific period of time and at certain work centers. The scheduling, in order for you to generate the schedule, you have to look at the production order, you have to look at the work center, you have to look at the formulas for the work center, you have to look also at the material master. SAP will do an availability check to see whether these resources that are scheduled in order to produce the material are actually available or not. And based on their availability, you may have like to update or make changes to the dates. If, on the other hand, the resources are available, then you need to reserve them so that they become available when you need them for the production order to execute. To start the execution, we need to do an order release. We said that there are different statuses for the order. When the order is first created and saved, it's the status is created, but you need to release that order in order to do the goods movement, which means release the goods also out of stock into the shop floor in order, or to the work center in order to start the operation. You cannot again confirm an order unless it has first been released. So it's very important that you release the order first so that you can start the execution determined. Now, when the order is released, it can be released at the header level or at the operation level. If you release the order at the header level, that means all operations that are listed will also be released, which means you're ready to perform all of them. But you can choose to release the order at the operation level, which means you choose specific operations to be released. In that case, the order is pre-released. It's partially released. It's not totally released. You have like specific operations that have been released and not others. So until all of the operations are released, the order will have the partially released stats. When all of them are released, then it will have the released stats. You can configure the system to automatically release at the header level, or you can set it to manually release if you need to release at the operation level. We've already talked about that, the availability check. We said that when we create the schedule, we list the set of resources that are required, and you need to check if these resources and these components are actually available. If they are available, then you reserve them. If they are not, then you will have to display missing part lists. That means these are the things that are not available but are needed for us to start the execution. Now, that availability check can be done automatically by the system, or it can be done manually. Again, it all depends upon the configuration, how you have configured the system. Again, as a result, the output of the availability check would be the reservations for all components that are available at the dates that they are needed, and again a list of all the missing parts that are not available but are also needed for production. Usually have the lead time between the actual release of the order and the execution, and that time is needed for you to prepare to set up for production. As soon as the order is released, we also release print shop floor documents And some of these documents are like the material withdrawal slips. And these are like documents that allow you to withdraw material in order to use them for production. You can have the goods movement, moving goods from one place in storage to another, from one work center to the other. You can also accept confirmation against the order that the items or the material have been produced. So once the production order is released, you can start printing the shop floor documents. And as we said, there are like different types. There are ones that are operation based. So time ticket, these are like how much time you take for a specific activity using a specific resource. The confirmation slips of when the order has been executed. There are some that relates to the component, like the material withdrawal slip, and these are like for pulling material or moving material to the shop floor in order to be used in the production processes or operations. There is the production resource tools. These are like movable tools that can move from one work center to the other and are used for production. And then we have the multi-purpose list, like for example, an operation control ticket. This is when something happened while you are doing the operation and you want to record that so that the manager would take notice of it. As the operations are executed, you get confirmation, and that's like at the end of each of operation, you get a confirmation for that particular operation, and of course a confirmation for the whole production order. Now the confirmation would show how much quantity did you use, if there is any scrap, what was the setup time for each of the machines, how much time did you use for the machine, the exact date for when you set it up, for the processing, for the tear down, any employee who had carried out the operation, and if there are more than one, which work center did you use in order to execute the operation, any goods movement, whether they are planned or unplanned, and these are like the goods that you needed. Some of them will be unplanned, as we said, because of unexpected events in the production process, and these will result in the variance. So you have certain variance. There is a budgeted or a plan, and there is an actual, and the difference between them is a variance. It's very important that you record why the variance exists. It could be that the machine was broken and result in damage of certain material, and you had to move unplanned material. So all of these resources, all of the production resource tools, as we said, these are the movable resources, also need to be accounted for. So all of these appear in the order confirmation. As at the end of the order, you are producing certain goods, and of course these goods needs to be stored in stock. So that's when you create the goods receipt, that you are accepting the confirmed quantity of output from the production order into stock. You are putting that back into stock. So of course that will result in an increase in stock, in the number as well as in the value. And you also have now evaluation changes. There might be evaluation changes based on the cost of production. So you have a material document, you have an accounting document, and you have a control document. The material document, because you have now an increase in stock. There is an accounting document because an increase in value and any variance that resulted. Now, the variance will also be handled by control. Control is actually the unit in accounting that deal with the variance and any settlement that you need like to do in order to assign the additional cost that you have incurred, the actual cost that you have incurred, assign them to specific cost centers. So the very final step now in production is the order settlement, and that's settling the actual cost incurred in the order to one or more receiver cost centers. It can be now a material, it can be a cost center, because remember that the costs that you are incurring are for production of a material. So they may not be, the receiver for that cost may not be a cost center. It can be a material itself, a finished good that you have produced, and you are accumulating cost to that material, not to a cost center. It can be to an internal order if you are producing for to satisfy internal demand, or it can be to a sales order, or it can be to a project, or it can be to a fixed asset because you're maintaining that fixed asset. So there are different types of receivers now to the cost incurred in production. Sometimes the cost need to be settled among different receivers, not just one. We said there are different types of receivers, but you can also have distribution, and you have a distribution rule and method, and we talked about that in control, where you are going to distribute the cost among different cost centers based on a statistical key figure. Now, so I need to know, how will I assign the debit cost element to the settlement cost element? How am I transferring from financial accounting to control? There are, of course, certain rules that I will have to follow, and this determines the percentages or the particular statistical key figure that I will need to use in order to assign the cost. In order settlement, remember that the quantity produced may be less than what you have targeted, and as a result, the target cost will be different, because you have planned to produce, for example, 25 when you actually only produce 20. The target cost is the actual quantity produced multiplied by the planned cost. So yes, it may not, the actual, there is no cost variance, but the actual quantity produced is less than what you have planned. And as a result, you will see that there is a difference between the cost of the material produced and the cost accumulated in the production order. And you have to settle that variance. You have to settle that difference between the two. With that, then we have finished all of the production cycle, and we are the production order is now completed. So it has been delivered. We have settled the difference in cost and everything. Thank you all for listening.